Right, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this afternoon session. To those of you who were wondering, yes, I did play Fly Me to the Moon to get us all into a nice, calm space after a long, busy day. And we all know what it's like trying to make sure that our microphones are muted or unmuted, sound is happening, our camera looks good. So hopefully that just gave you a chance to join in. So just a very brief overview of the agenda for today. Excuse me, we will be talking today about 21 CLD, specifically the collaboration aspect of it. So we're going to drill down into a bit more detail from what we covered last week in last week's session. I'm then going to hand over to Tracy Heath, who's going to do the class team in MIEE and the submission in terms of OneNote. So she's got her OneNote cape on and she's ready to fly with you to the moon, the OneNote moon. We are then going to have 5 minutes, during which time we will then be sent into our breakout rooms, and you will then have team time with your co-pilots. For those of you who have forgotten who I am because you're a guest on our team, I'm Wendy Sartoff, and as I say, you'll hear from Tracy Heath shortly. So just moving on to what we covered last week, I'm not going to go into a huge amount of detail, but we highlighted for you the 6 that are important in 21 CLD. And a reminder, those 3-letter acronyms, 21st Century Learning Design. Those are the skills that we need to make sure that we've got a good understanding of, so that the activities that we are planning in our classrooms for our MIEE submission cover these skills as much as possible. As I said last week, the 4 key things that we need to remember with collaboration is that we need to have evidence of working together, shared responsibilities, substantive decisions, and interdependent work. And it's very important that we remember it's not just a box-ticking exercise to say our students collaborated. It's really the quality that is important. So just by putting students into pairs or groups does not mean they're going to work together in the truest sense of the word. And the collaboration, I mean, all 6 of these skills are critically important going forward in the workplace. But collaboration is probably the one that we feel the most as teachers as well. We need to negotiate with our colleagues. We need to resolve conflict, agree on what's going to be done. We distribute tasks amongst ourselves, and we listen to the ideas of others, hopefully, and we integrate these ideas into a coherent whole when we are teaching our students. So this is not something that is just instinctive or intuitive. It's actually there are skills that we need to develop. So the reason behind having collaboration as a 21st century learning design skill is that we need to be making conscious decisions in our design of our work that allows our students to develop these skills. So I just want to unpack each of those a little bit more in terms of what the 21 CLD is looking for. So as I said, it's pairs or groups in terms of the working together strand, and this could be both within the classroom. It can include people from outside the classroom. So for example, students from another class, students from another school, such as some of the work that I know is going on in our high school in the English and history departments. Yes, I have a child in doing both those subjects in the high school. How do I know? Also, it can include community members and it can include SMEs, subject matter experts. All of those constitute working together. However, when we are looking at that, it's not just enough that people are together and discussing an issue. It actually has to go further. It's about solving the problem. It is about creating a product or discussing some kind of solution that they can implement. We can use both face-to-face group work or pair work, or we can use technology to communicate, especially across time zones and geographical locations as well. When we are looking at the group work, we have to really ask ourselves to what extent the students are doing more than just helping one another. So it's more than just giving feedback. It is actually a shared responsibility. We cannot have just one person owning the work and others helping. Rather, they have to own the work collectively. In other words, the success of the project depends on everybody doing their bit, and it needs to be something that they are mutually responsible for the outcome. So if group work involves others outside of the classroom, it only qualifies as shared responsibility if the students in the classroom and the outside participants are mutually responsible for the outcome. The next key point is around the substantive decisions, and really what the language there is trying to get us to think about is, are the students working together to make decisions about the content? What are they going to include? What approach are they going to take? What hypothesis might they be testing? Also, they need to make decisions about the process. What needs to be done? When does it need to be done? What tools are you going to use? And who's going to be responsible for what? And lastly, obviously, if you're producing a product or an outcome or output of some nature, you need to ensure that the design is actually discussed and decisions are made within the group. It is no good that two people work together, but they do everything according to one person's view. The interdependent work also links into this. In other words, all students need to contribute in order for the group to succeed at the task. So when you are looking at your unit of work or lessons or project for your MIEE submission, you need to be asking yourself, have I ensured that as I go into this, everybody is sharing in the development, presentation, the input of this particular piece of work? I'll just remind you very briefly, I showed you last week the rubric. So this is, or not a rubric, rather the decision tree. This is an easy way for you to check where you're at. Now, I'll reiterate, even though ultimately what we would like is our work to hit a level 5, it is not possible all of the time for all of the work that you do. It is not a good academic decision at times to make students work in pairs or groups. Sometimes it has to be individual. You don't exactly want collaboration on your exam, for example. So don't feel that you have to hit a 5, but rather be looking at, well, is there anything I could just tweak slightly and improve the skills that are being developed without too much of a problem for both yourself and the students? Or perhaps you need to be quite critical and actually say, hang on a minute, this is not really giving them the best opportunity to be able to develop their collaboration skills. The rubric I didn't show you, so this is a bit new. All it is really using words to describe what is in that decision tree. Because we all know that as students and teachers, we have different ways of learning. So if you find that decision tree a little bit mind-boggling and it's not comfortable for you, this is a really good way to work through and ask yourself where your particular piece of work is fitting in. And I'm not going to go into too much detail on any examples and the like, but I do want to flag an example which I have uploaded into Teams. And on my next slide, fingers crossed, this is where we like to try to fail. And I don't mean we want to have a disaster, but that we do sometimes try new things, and sometimes they work and sometimes they don't. So I've got a lovely link here, and I'm hoping this is going to whiz me into Teams. And if I lose you, I will simply, I'll get a thumbs up from my colleague if she can see the PDF on the screen, and if she can't, she's going to shake her head, and as I suspected, she's shaking her head. So I'm going to just change what I'm sharing for a second so that I can show you exactly what I've got. So hopefully now the PDF is available. So I've uploaded, not quite. The sense of anticipation is killing me. You see, I had to tell you to have a lovely fly me to the moon, otherwise we'd all be stressed. Am I good to go? Talk about a disaster. Okay, I'm going to try one more time and let's just see. But I've put it there for you. I probably just need to try and change what I'm sharing with you. So fingers crossed. Okay. Are you seeing my team? Wonderful. In-class materials? No, no such luck. Okay, well, in that case, I'm just going to talk to it a little bit. I hope you can see my face on the screen at least. So, no, you see, it's amazingly sad how things go horribly wrong. We've just discovered that the latest update has some very interesting options for sharing. And I have not had the best luck in the world. Right, I think I've got it now. I see my red line around my screen. I'm good to go, yay. The example that I've given there is actually something that comes from Microsoft in conjunction with the work that they did about research on 21st century learning design. And it's an example of an activity where students were asked to come together and look at various geological things to make an assessment about a site. So what they had to do, they covered things in science and language arts. Obviously, this is an American lesson, but they had to learn about geology, seismology, and volcanology of 3 different potential sites for an Olympic Games. And then based on their assessment, they had to recommend a specific site. They had to write a business letter in which they indicated which site they would recommend to the Olympic Committee, and they'd have to explain why. And I'm not going to go through all of this. I'm going to let you do that on your own time. But what I wanted to flag particularly was on page 4, they set out the details of the task that the team are going to engage in. They specifically say here, they give each team member becomes a specialist in their field. So for example, there's a seismologist, a volcanologist, a geologist, and without their information, they wouldn't be able to make a decision. So they get given this table that they have to fill in, and based on the information from each of these specialists, they would then make a decision. So if the volcanologist does not do their job within the team is not going to produce a successful outcome because they're missing information, and it might actually be that their decision, the seismologist and the geologist, is negated by information from the volcanologist. So for those of you who want to explore this in a little bit more detail, it gives you a lovely rubric in terms of what you're looking for as a teacher. It gives you also a set of questions that the teacher can consider as well, and I think you will find that very helpful. So I think I've come to the end of my time, and we don't want to keep you all afternoon. So I am at this point just going to stop sharing my screen, and I think Mrs. Heath is standing by, ready to go, and I'll hand over to her.
Right, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Tracy Heath. I'm an innovation mentor at Brescia House, for those of you that don't know me. This afternoon, we are going to look at our OneNote submission and how we go about doing that. For those of you that haven't been into a Teams meeting since yesterday, they have changed the share screen, so don't get a fright if you're working. I found the easiest one to open is Window, and at this stage I'm going to share my PowerPoint slideshow with you. Right, so welcome to OneNote. Creating and using your own personal notebook. This PowerPoint slideshow has been placed into the contents, which I'll show you in a minute, so you can actually go back after the meeting and go and follow the steps step by step if you want to. Right, so our schedule, we're looking at the different steps in the process of creating a notebook. So let's look at the types of notebooks you get. You get personal notebooks and you get class notebooks. Our submissions will be done on a personal notebook, and that's what I'm going to show you how to create. In a class notebook, we do have various sections, and I just want to point them out to you. The collaboration tab is where everyone can edit at the same time. So it's a bit like having a whiteboard that everybody can write on at the same time. Word of warning, try and get whoever's working on it to just indicate where they're writing before they start writing. Otherwise, everybody writes on top of one another's work. The content library, this is where you can store documents, worksheets, etc. You can edit in the content library and the learner can go and collect things from there. So say, for example, by mistake, they delete something, they can actually go back and fetch that worksheet and add it to their own notebook. And they can copy it, but they cannot edit it until it is in their notebook. Then you have a teacher section, which is where only you or anyone that is in your team can view and edit and add materials. And then the fourth part is where the learner has their notebook and they can only see their notebook. When you as a teacher look, you can see all of the people that are in your group, but the learner can only see their notebook, and both you and the learner can edit on in this section. Right, so creating the OneNote notebook. Online, you have to sign into OneNote and give the notebook a name, and you can see in the middle of the page here, it says new notebook, and then you would go into that, type in the name of the notebook and create. For the purposes of the MIE application, I would put my name first and then I would call it MIE application or something similar. It just makes it your name more important in that space. Right, the next thing that we can look at is adding a notebook in OneNote for Windows 10, and I will demonstrate both of these in these applications. In OneNote for Windows 10, we have to go to add notebook at the bottom of the list of notebooks, which would be on the left-hand side, and then you would go in, type in what it is you want, and create notebook, a new notebook. There are two versions of applications that you could find on your computer. Generally, we work in OneNote for Windows 10. The 2016 version is a little bit different, but it is a lot older as well, so there are things that are different there. Right, where do you find your notebooks once you've created one? In the OneDrive of your computer, you will find notebooks and OneNote notebooks. You will have to look inside to see where your notebook is. This is where you will find that you can put a link to share your notebook with somebody else. And everything that is in that notebook will be visible to that person. If you go online, you will find your OneNote notebooks in OneNote, so you will have to sign in. So at this stage, I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm actually going to go to the application so we can have a look at the differences there. So I can't find it. Just like Mrs. Sartoff couldn't find it. Right, if you have a look now, you can see I've gone online. I'm in my Office 365 account, and all my applications are down the side here. If you can't find an app that you're looking for, click on the waffle, type in whatever it is you're looking for, and it will come up. So if I went here, I can find OneNote, and it will open my OneNote in on the screen. And here you can see all my notebooks. You have pinned notebooks, you have my notebooks, notebooks that may have been shared with you, and then you have class notebooks also, which would be any team notebook that you have opened. And then obviously we have the various notebooks that you may go and look for. So here you will see this is our notebook that is for our team that we're all currently in, and this is where we will find the PowerPoints, last week's recording, etc. If I want to start a new notebook, I'm then going to click New Notebook, type in the name, and create. And it's a very simple process of just making basically the outside of the binder. If I was to do this in the application, I just want to see if I can find the application here, because it seems to be it's not coming up. Okay, let's see if I can share the screen. Okay, So a few technical difficulties. Right, I'm now in the application. So when you're in the application here, you have OneNote notebooks. Now, if you're in a notebook, it won't allow you to see where to start a new notebook. So you just need to close that notebook. Here is a list of my notebooks, and I have lots of notebooks, so you don't see all of them. If you have too many to look at, you can actually right-click and you can close the notebook, and then it would disappear off the list. So at the bottom, we have Add Notebook, and we would now add the notebook. Right, so let's create one for today. You have to choose which account it would be in, and then create. And it's as simple as that. It is now creating my notebook. What is magic about using our OneDrive is that this is now linked between all of my accounts. Within a few minutes, I can simply work in different places. What's really nice is if it is in the application, I can work offline. So if you're in the app, working on your computer, you can work offline and then only sync it to the internet later on if you are worrying about using data. You can see it takes a few minutes because it's got to create all those links, and there we are. We now have a notebook. The next part of creating a notebook, this is now my personal notebook. I can add sections. I'm not going to add sections because this is a very simple notebook, and this is what we're going to use for our application. So here I have the first page. In order to change this untitled here, I simply need to type on the page. And so this would be MIE 2021. Because I was an MIE last year, this is a section I would have to work in and explain how I've worked with colleagues and what I've learned, etc. The next thing is I would need to add another page. So if I go to the bottom of this column over here, I can add a page, and then I can simply add the heading of the next page. And so you can go on and add all the pages that are required for you to make this little notebook. So I'm now going to go back to my presentation just so that you can see the different parts of the notebook that we require. So, right, so if you have a look here, this is an example of pages having already been added. And you can see here, I have added all these pages for the application for this year. So these are all the parts that are required. The MIE for 2021 is only people who are currently in MIE, and they need to complete this section. And this is where you're going to share about your learnings from the past year. Then for those of us, all of us, the use of Microsoft tools. In this section, Microsoft want to know what tools you're using and very basically what for. So we would be using Teams. Everybody's using Teams today, so Teams would be one of your applications. You could have a little screenshot of yourself working in Teams, or you could just simply have a screenshot of one of your teams and just say, I'm using Teams to meet with people, to teach my learners, etc. You can add OneNote because now you will be submitting on OneNote, and PowerPoint, Word, Whiteboard, whatever you use. You can just add that in. The next page that you would require is your 21st Century Skills project. That's the big project that will be explained, that we have been explaining to us each other in groups. And this is why we're covering the 21st century skills at the beginning of every week's meeting, just so everybody has a good understanding of what those skills are. The artifact or learner examples would be your next page. Remember, an artifact could be a video, a voice clip, a screen grab, anything that just shows how you are using Microsoft with your learner. And this is learner's work. This is not your own work. So that's the difference between the project using 21st century, that would be your stuff, and in the artifacts, it would be the children's work. Please remember, when you take photographs of learners, you may not include their faces in the pictures or anything that can identify them. Then the next page that is included is your Microsoft sharing. So this is where you shared with people, work together, helping one another, Teams meetings, sharing documents, working together on projects. That would be included there. And this is where hacks can be inserted to show that you've been sharing. Also remember that when we meet afterwards in our groups, anything you say sharing in that group also becomes part of the sharing. And then the last point I put in is the transcript of points. I personally am going to print out a transcript. I just feel that the link can be put in here as well, but I'd like to print out my transcript, and that comes from the Microsoft Educator website. Right, so inserting information. So the tools in OneNote are very similar to those in all other Microsoft applications. So you can insert tables. Files would be something that you already have in Word or PowerPoint, or you can insert it as a printout, so it would look like a page. Pictures, links, that could be links to videos, etc. If you click on audio, it will allow you to record directly onto the page, and then you can see you've got all these other things that you can add in, emojis, maths working, etc. So this is here the online application. This one here is if you are in the Windows 10 application. So very similar look for both of those. Right, so sharing notebooks. Now, sharing any file is done in the same manner. You would go to where the notebook is saved. In this case, in my OneDrive, I look for the little yellow folder. I would right-click on it, and it will be highlighted, and you will get the send link that comes up. We would not be sending the link, but copying the link, which is this symbol at the bottom, the two chains. You copy the link, and that would be put into your application form. Now, obviously, we're not doing this at the moment, but this is just here to assist you so that when you get to that point, you know how to share your notebook with your application. Right, and then for those of you that are really not familiar with OneNote, here is the link to the Microsoft Education Center, and this is where you would go, and it's a very short session, about 30 minutes, but it really is worth doing if you've never used OneNote Class Notebook. Also, this is the place where you would get your transcriptive points. So what I've been going through right now has been a personal notebook. If we look at the class notebook, we are all in a class team at the moment. So if you have a look, here is the general channel, and in the general channel, you will see that we have all this information. If you go to files, you will see here SharePoint site documents. This is where we are putting information like today's PowerPoint for you to go and look at after the meeting. And then the channel would be your small little group that you belong to. So this is my group, the Mercury group, and only they would be able to go in there. You can see that it's got a lock on it. That means it's a closed group, and only the teacher or team leader can add people to that group. So this is a slightly different look for those of you that haven't used it before. So for next week, we're giving you homework. Your homework is to create your personal notebook and then to check the team class notebook for updates. So I'm going to stop sharing this, and I'm going to go back to the team and share the team page with everyone so that everyone can. Right, so this is our team page. If you have a look here, you would be able to go in, and if you go to the files and you go to SharePoint documents and open it, this is where you will see, here is the personal notebooks, but here are all the other presentations that we've had so far, and Wendy Sartoff will be adding hers to this, if not in the next few minutes, certainly during the course of the afternoon. If anybody has any questions, please put them in the chat, and we'll try to answer your questions as best possible. The next step this afternoon is going to be to go into our breakout rooms and to do the various different parts that are required of each different group. So if you all just wait a few minutes, we will go off and we'll see you in your teams. And thanks for listening.